From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Soybean fields holding a secret.
Tennessee's #1 row crop, soybeans, face a threat from a disease called taproot.
Why this golden color is all wrong and what researchers are doing to try to prevent it. Helping your soil reach its fullest potential.
Not every soil is created equal.
How to build resiliency as we continue to help farmers flip their soil. And could we see a change when it comes to corn yield predictions?
I still feel need to come down. Demand needs to go up further.
What analysts are predicting ahead of a big report from USDA right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The Pro Farmer 2024 Crop Tour found the potential for some big corn yields in the Midwest this year. But could that be about to change? USDA will release its latest supply and demand report tomorrow, and some analysts are predicting the agency will cut corn yields. AgDay's Michelle Rook joins me. Michelle, this report could have a big impact on prices going forward.
Yeah, that's right. Average trade guesses for the September WASDE generally indicate that weather may have shaved the top end yield off of corn and soybeans in August, but both crops will still see record yields printed. The wild cards are these are the first objective field surveys of the season done by USDA, and just how much of the record yield expectations are already built into the market. The trade estimates for corn yield are mostly below the record 183.1 bushel per acre USDA estimate in August, but the cut is slight at no more than a half a bushel.
We're talking minor stuff here, and then at the end of the day, I mean, we may revert back to, those July numbers, but I think we're above 180. It's, instead of a 183, 184, it's a 181, 182 type number.
Corn production is still estimated to be at 15 to 15.1 billion bushels, with ending stocks just above 2 billion. Yet a few analysts are more optimistic.
But I do think that we could see carryouts, at least on corn, fall further, even if the yields remain the same, because harvested acres, I still feel need to come down. Demand needs to go up further.
On soybeans, trade guesses indicate dry August weather only shaved yields slightly, with fractional changes on either side of last month's record 53.2 bushel yield.
At the end of the day, the crop is still big. It's just not as big as what it could have been, 30 days ago.
Seed size may be the biggest factor here, as this is the first report USDA weighs field samples.
And it really comes down to seed size. Overall, even though we finished hot, August was a cool month. That favors big seed sizes and surprises in September. On the other hand, we finished dry, and in some areas really dry. That favors smaller seed size and smaller yields. How will the two balance out? That's the biggest question I have for Thursday.
Estimates on soybean production are still around a record 4.6 billion bushels, with ending stocks slightly above last month's 560 million. And analysts say that's likely already factored into prices. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Happening right now along portions of the Gulf Coast, evacuations are underway as people in livestock get out of the way of Francine. The storm is barreling toward the U.S. and is expected to strengthen into a Category 2 hurricane before making landfall later today. Laura Aguirre has an update.
Harvest gets much more complicated if you get a lot of rain and wind.
And that's exactly what's heading toward the southern U.S. coast as the latest named storm, Francine, gains strength over warm Gulf waters. From Arkansas farmers hustling to collect crops early inland to long lines at some coastal area gas stations, millions are bracing for severe storm impacts. Forecast models show Francine currently making landfall near Morgan City in Louisiana sometime Wednesday afternoon, potentially as a Category 2 hurricane.
Now the Baton Rouge metro area is under the gun. Could be looking at storm surge anywhere of 6 to even 10 feet, depending on the track of the storm.
Louisiana's governor declared a state of emergency Monday and has asked FEMA to assist other mobilizing state and local emergency response agencies.
I feel very confident that
all of the agencies have activated their emergency response plans and pre-positioning the assets needed.
Francine could also spawn some tornadoes in Louisiana in the days ahead, while coastal areas from Texas to Mississippi could see up to 8 inches of rain.
As we all remember, Beryl took an unexpected pathway. We must be prepared for Francine.
Hurricane Beryl slammed into Texas in July, killing 7 people there and 1 other in Louisiana. Ahead of Francine, officials are warning residents to heed evacuation orders and avoid flooded roads.
Be safe with your own life, knowing that you can control your own safety by making a decision about where you do and where you do not drive.
I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
Meanwhile, in the West, extreme heat and wildfires continue to spread, also prompting evacuations. California fire officials are battling the Boyles Fire, about 100 miles west of Sacramento, the Bridge Fire in Los Angeles County, and the Line Fire in San Bernardino County, northwest of Los Angeles. There's also the Davis Fire in Nevada, burning south of Reno, where 600 fire personnel are fighting the flames, and a herd of horses was caught on video rushing down a South Reno road, fleeing the fire, seemingly evacuating themselves from danger. Now, one resident says her animals are the reason she can't leave despite receiving an evacuation order.
You have to stay when you have livestock, so we need to make sure that they are taken care of. Plus, this is our home. Like, we've raised our children here. This is my family. Like, this is our neighborhood.
While temperatures drop slightly, an uptick in gusty winds continue to add to the fire danger on Tuesday. So there's a lot to keep track of on the weather map this week. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us with more. Matt?
We're taking a look at what's going on in the tropics, as we do have the potential for a pretty impactful storm to make its way through Louisiana and back up here towards the north. Now, a couple of things that I want to point out. Not only is it the actual tropical system, Francine, right down here, bottom left-hand corner of your screen, but the amount of rainfall and moisture wrapped up in the Gulf of Mexico out ahead of this system is going to keep cloud cover and also some downpours around before the main system moves in. Now, as you head farther north, there's a lot of dry air and a ridge of high pressure. So that's why we get kind of this straight path back up into Louisiana and then more of a circle as this turns into what's called a remnant low. But it's going to be butting up right against some dry air and the ridge of high pressure we've been talking all about this past week and last week as well. So this is Wednesday at 7 a.m. And coming ashore late in the morning, early in the afternoon in Louisiana. As possibly a Category 1, Category 2 storm. The main concern here is the rainfall and the storm surge with this system. Again, there's Thursday at 2 a.m. And more harvest scenes, this time from Casey in North Dakota. He says it's going to be a great week for the pinto bean harvest. Hope you bring in a terrific crop, Casey. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Flip Your Soil on Ag Day is brought to you by ESN. Hear why farmers across the country trust ESN to protect their nitrogen investment and maximize yield. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
Every farmer wants to grow higher yielding crops, and healthier soils can help them reach that goal. Now, healthy soil is more productive and profitable. However, soil scientists say each operation is different, and so is their soil. So that requires an individualized soil health and conservation plan.
Not every soil is created equal. Some soils are inherently less fertile for whatever reason, or inherently hold less water, for example, sandy soils. And so if you're starting behind the 8 ball, you need to try a little bit harder to try to get your soil up to a higher standard.
Now, he suggests following basic soil health principles such as eliminating tillage, using cover crops, and adding diversity to rotations. This approach will result in resilient soil.
So our healthy soils, they're taking in every drop of rain that falls. So we have a higher effective rainfall that we can capture in the soil that will be available to the plants later. As we increase carbon in the soil, we increase water holding capacity.
NRCS has several conservation programs available to provide financial and technical assistance to farmers to customize a plan for their operation. Now, tomorrow we'll introduce you to an operation that has been using a systems approach to conservation and soil health successfully since 1991. After a strong start on Monday, bean futures took a tumble on Tuesday. We'll discuss that and what else is moving markets next. And later, leaves changing color is a beautiful part of fall, unless it's your soybean crop and it's being caused by a plant disease. We'll tell you about a new issue popping up in Tennessee in the country. Soybeans took back all the gains made on Monday, and corn futures were lower as well. AgDay's Michelle Rook is back with more in Markets Now.
Grains ending mixed on Tuesday. Dave Chatterton with Strategic Farm Marketing is back with analysis. Okay, a setback in the row crops on Tuesday, Dave, and soybeans falling below the $10 mark. So, how much of that was crop ratings, maybe ideas we're going to see better yields in the report here?
Yeah, Michelle, kind of a tough day in the soybeans, lead on the downside for sure. And as you mentioned, kind of that lead or that, November contract slipping back below that kind of important or psychologically important $10 mark again. And I think it's a combination of a couple things. I think if you go back to Monday's crop ratings, the market was expecting, crop ratings typically decline this time of year. We got a steady rating. Those ratings continue to print, at levels well above what would be the historical, mid-September ideas or ranges. And I think that feeds an idea of exactly what you talked about, that there is the potential for the USDA to potentially raise that yield, even from the, a pretty stemmy record value here, a record projection again on Thursday, at least in some people's minds. We'll have to see how that goes. That doesn't really bear out in the surveys that we've seen coming into the report, but I think that idea is being bantered around in the trade. I think that combined with a lack of flash sales here today on Tuesday, and we've had some China in here in the last few weeks. We've had them in as a consistent buyer, but on a very small basis, not the 1 million and 2 million metric ton weeks that we would like to see.
So the corn market slightly lower. It's been playing kind of a follower's role here, but the fact that we're still above $4, does that give you the idea that the market's comfortable with what yield is going to be going into the report?
I think when we look at what's going on in corn, the foliar disease issue there, and the tar spot and the anthracnose, particularly in our part of the country here in central Illinois, very prevalent, and definitely I think the idea in the producers' minds that it's taking the top end off of yields. That doesn't mean yields necessarily go down on Thursday, but I think the market feels like, hey, we're probably have seen the peak number from the USDA and what will happen going forward. And the futures market, corn just continues to be kind of a follower. Michelle, if in a day like today when beans are down, wheat is up, corn doesn't do much. And in a reverse day, when beans are up and wheat is down, corn doesn't want to seem to do much or find its own footing here. So I think we're waiting for a cue from the USDA and kind of confirming that seasonal low.
Thanks for joining us, Dave Chatterton, Strategic Farm Marketing. We'll have more AgDay coming up.
I wanted to revisit this map once again as we look at that tropical system, Francine, coming through parts of Louisiana and back up here towards the Mississippi River. Those areas, they need the rain, but as we've talked about before, we want to avoid a storm surge, and we certainly want to avoid a foot of rainfall in the span of just a day. But it does look like a soaking tropical system will be working up in the Mississippi as we go into the next couple of days. So again, there's a look at the drought monitor. Back up here towards parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin, we stay dry, may get some relief towards the tail end of the work week and into the weekend thanks to that energy. But again, this ridge in the upper parts of the atmosphere, the steering mechanism for that tropical system, is going to keep any widespread rain outside of this tropical system at bay. So again, this energy isn't going to come straight to the east, providing widespread showers. Rather, it's going to scoot back up here to the north. This ridge is also going to suppress a lot of the moisture and the cloud cover to the south. So by Thursday and Friday, I wouldn't call it a system really stalling out, but it is going to move a lot slower than if we had some steering winds picking up speed and pulling it to the northeast. So again, it's just going to kind of sit at the surface, raining itself out. We do have to be concerned about the potential for some flooding, not only in Louisiana, but into Tennessee and Memphis as well, and Kansas, as well as into Missouri with this kind of system. So again, trough up here to the northwest, that is going to miss grabbing this system and working it out. We're just going to slowly fade that energy into the ridge of high pressure, and most of the northeast will be spared of any kind of direct impacts from that tropical moisture, although we certainly could use some of that rain in and across the Midwest and the northeast. But again, all eyes going to be on Louisiana the next couple of days and back up here towards the north with some very heavy rainfall on the way. Again, that's the jet stream coming in on Sunday. South Dakota, 88 degrees, low of 60 degrees, high around 88 degrees. Missouri, mostly sunny, high around 88 degrees, low of 60. What goes well with tea? How about teapotters? New Jersey, high around 82, mostly sunny skies, low of 56.
July pork exports continued to trend higher. The U.S. Meat Export Federation reviewing the latest information from USDA with 241,000 tons of pork exported globally, a 10% growth, and Mexico leading the way with over 100,000 tons. And it says the export numbers show some momentum moving into the second part of the year.
I think Latin America, we have every reason to believe that these trend lines on pork, but even on beef as well. Mexico should continue, and Central America and South America, I think, are on similar tracks for continued growth.
Through the first 7 months of the year, pork exports were 4% above last year. Export value also trending higher, up 6% from a year ago. The National Pork Producers Council hosting a virtual briefing recently, updating producers on the bottom line issues. That includes the need for a new farm bill to get done this year. Dwayne Statler, the president-elect of MPPC, adding they're also hoping to get California's Proposition 12 addressed, saying that California pork housing law puts the cost and compliance burden on pork producers and puts the industry at risk of significant consolidation. It wants a federal solution to Prop 12. The group also says labor issues remain a concern, along with the cost of production, with overall production costs remaining roughly 25% higher than 3 years ago, with little relief on the feed side. Keeping plants healthy as long as possible is the key to big yields. Up next, we're off to Tennessee to learn about a new disease attacking soybeans from the ground up in the country. Soybeans are vital to Tennessee's ag economy, but the state's #1 row crop is under threat from a harmful plant disease. The University of Tennessee's Charles Denny has more on efforts to identify and stop taproot.
Soybeans are expected to turn a beautiful golden color in harvest season, agricultural foliage. But here it's much too early to see yellow in this field. These beans are suffering from taproot decline, a pathogen that attacks the root system.
When the leaves are changing color, the plant is not doing what it's supposed to. It's not going to be able to function the way it needs to.
Heather Kelly, UT Extension plant pathologist, says they've seen taproot the past several years in this field at the UT Ag Research Center in Milan. The disease was also a topic of discussion at the recent no-till field day. Taproot is in the soil, and the disease basically kills the whole plant from the ground up.
And that above ground symptomology is really the aftermath, the effect of the fungus feeding on the root system and essentially killing that taproot and not allowing it to take up what it needs to continue to produce.
Taproot was first discovered in the U.S. in 2007 and made its way here to West Tennessee about a decade later. One issue with this disease, it's hard to identify. Shelley Pate Kearns is now with LSU and did graduate studies here at the UT Ag Research Center on controlling taproot.
Although it does show foliar symptoms, it is a soil-borne pathogen and it has a lot of similarities foliar-wise to other soybean pathogens. And so we do suspect that taproot decline has been present in Tennessee for years, but we are only recently able to pick up on it and identify it as its own disease.
Not only is it misidentified, taproot can appear in other crops. Lauderdale County farmer Robert Hill and his family are some of Tennessee's biggest cotton producers, and they believe they're seeing taproot there.
So we've seen some problems with taproots, especially in wet springs. The taproot will go down a ½ inch and then it starts going sideways because it either hits a kind of a hard pan where we've had to try to get the crop in a little wetter than we would like to.
While you can't save soybeans and other crops already exhibiting taproot decline, experts encourage producers to try varieties resistant to the pathogen. Taproot has been called a mystery disease, but if you're able to correctly spot it, then you can develop a plan of action. This is Charles Denny reporting.
All right, thanks, Charles. And we want to take a moment to acknowledge that today is Patriot Day. The day set aside to honor and remember the 2,977 lives lost 23 years ago today when America was attacked by terrorists. We leave you today with the annual tribute in light, the twin beams of light at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York, representing the Twin Towers. Thanks for watching, and from all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. May we never forget.